Extreme close-up. The dim, flickering light of a single kerosene lantern. Cold, dirty hands tear away heavy, grease-soaked brown paper. The thick sound of tearing paper, the heavy clack of metal hitting a wooden table. It is midnight in a damp cellar somewhere in occupied France. The hands pulling away the waxed paper belong to a 19-year-old student who has never held a firearm. He expects a weapon. What he finds instead looks like a bad joke. Close-up on the weapon on the table. It is a dull, gray cylinder. The welding is rough, pooling in ugly beads. The metal is stamped and covered in machine oil. It is a length of steel pipe attached to a crude metal frame. The edges are sharp enough to cut the skin. There is no polished wood, no finely milled steel. It smells of grease and desperation. It looks like a plumber's mistake. The hands nervously pick up the weapon, fumbling to slot a magazine into the side of the tube. But in the months to come, this crude, ugly piece of plumbing will become the most feared object in occupied Europe. This is the Sten gun. Title card: The Ugly Pipe. Archival footage. British soldiers leaving the beaches of Dunkirk in 1940. They look exhausted, defeated. Then a slow pan across fields littered with abandoned rifles and artillery. To understand the pipe, you have to look at an island stripped to the bone. In 1940, Britain leaves the bulk of its modern weaponry in the sand at Dunkirk. A German invasion is a mathematical probability. The British don't have time for craftsmanship. They need to kill soldiers, and they need to do it cheaply. Split screen. On the left, a German MP-40 submachine gun, sleek, well-machined, complex. On the right, the Sten Mark II. The standard German submachine gun takes hours of skilled labor to mill from solid steel blocks. The Sten is designed differently. It is stamped from sheet metal and welded together. It costs just £2 and 5 shillings to make. Black and white footage of women in aprons operating heavy stamping machines, sparks flying from quick, rough welds. The parts are so simple, they aren't just made in weapons factories. They are stamped out by toy makers, bed frame manufacturers, and bicycle shops. But this speed comes with a physical cost to the people forced to rely on it. Modern recreation. A person holding the Sten. They instinctively grip the side protruding magazine with their left hand to support the heavy front end. The Sten fires from an open bolt, feeding from a magazine sticking awkwardly out the left side. The human instinct is to hold that magazine to balance the weight, but doing so bends the cheap metal feeding lips. The gun jams, the shooter dies. The person drops the Sten on the ground. A loud bang echoes on the audio track. Worse, the sear, the mechanism holding the firing pin back, is fragile. If a fighter jumps from the back of a truck or drops the weapon on the floor, the bolt can slip. A dropped Sten is known to spin like a top on the ground, emptying its entire 32-round magazine in a circle, indiscriminately shooting anyone in the room. Archival photos of parachute drops at night, wooden crates descending into the dark. Yet millions are made. They are packed into crates and dropped from Halifax bombers into the fields of France, Poland, and Norway. A damaged car in a Prague street, 1942. The assassination of Reinhard Heydrich. We can see the weapon's terrifying flaws and brutal utility on May 27, 1942. Two resistance fighters step in front of the open-top Mercedes of Reinhard Heydrich, the architect of the Holocaust. Josef Gobchik levels his Sten and pulls the trigger. Close-up on a Sten bolt locking up, stuck. Nothing happens. A piece of dirt or a bent magazine jams the cheap metal. The gun fails. Heydrich stands up to shoot back, only to be killed by a thrown grenade. German soldiers patrolling narrow village streets, looking nervously at the upper windows and alleyways. Despite high-profile failures, the Sten becomes a nightmare for the occupying forces. The historical record is fragmented. We don't have accurate ledgers of every weapon dropped, nor do we know the names of thousands who carried them in secret. The paper trail was routinely burned, but the casualty reports remain. Fast cuts, a Sten firing in the dark, bullet casings hitting cobblestones. The Sten wasn't an infantry weapon meant to fire across a 300-yard battlefield. It was an assassin's tool. It was built to be hidden under a trench coat, assembled in seconds, and emptied at a checkpoint, in a cafe, or down a narrow alleyway at 500 rounds a minute. It was the industrialization of the ambush. Return to the opening scene, the dim cellar. The hands have now finished slotting the parts together. The young fighter racks the heavy bolt back with a sharp metallic clack. It has sharp edges, it is unbalanced, it is just as likely to maim the person holding it as it is the enemy. Close-up on the fighter's face, calm, terrified, resolute, as they lower the weapon to their side. But as the grease is wiped away and the bolt locks into place, it is no longer just a cheap piece of plumbing. It is 32 rounds of 9mm ammunition, and in a continent stripped of hope, a crude, ugly pipe was exactly what the survival of Europe required.